Hi, it's Sarah. Thanks so much for listening to the Historic Scotland podcast. I really hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, don't forget to follow it so you don't miss future ones. Also, rate and review it. Tell us what you think, where we should go next, or share your favourite Historic Scotland location. Okay, on with the episode. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to the Historic Scotland podcast. My name's Sarah McGilvray. I'm an actor and writer with a passion for people, place and story. Each episode we travel to a different site, chat to the people that take care of it and uncover its surprising story. Today we're on the Isle of Lewis at the Arno Blackhouse, a rare surviving example of a traditional Hebridean home. We're stepping inside and transporting ourselves to a time when people and animals lived side by side under one roof and discovering what daily life was really like. I'm chatting to Marlene Macleod, who's managed this monument for over 15 years.
As today, it's freezing outside, but it's so cosy by the fire.
And to Davey, who's shining some light on the traditional techniques that were used in the creation of the Blackhouse and still are today.
We obviously can see the straw through the roof, through the roof timbers, but up to about 3/4 of the height of this roof, there's actually a layer of turf.
The first thing I noticed when I visited the Blackhouse was the sea. Then it's the smell. The Blackhouse in Arno on the west shore of the Isle of Lewis is one of Scotland's most remote locations.
Throw the stach, I'll put the fire on.
You're getting the bits of peat and putting them into the fire, so it's a peat fire. Does this burn all the time?
Yeah, all day, all night.
All day, all night? It never goes out?
Yeah, we never put it out.
You keep the peat fire burning?
Yeah.
That's Marlene. Oh, you can really smell it. It's quite a distinctive, strong smell, isn't it?
Throw the stach.
What's that mean?
Come in. Come to my fire.
She's been looking after the site for over 15 years.
Cup and tea. The kettle's boiling.
Cup and tea. It's hard to describe the Blackhouse to you. It's constructed from local stone with a thatched roof weighted down by ropes and stones to withstand the Atlantic gales. The house looks sunken into the ground slightly, but it isn't. It's small. Its layout is as practical as it is charming. A byre, which is a place where livestock is kept, like a stable, and a living space all under one roof. A central fire with no chimney and thick walls that held in warmth while keeping out the wind and the rain. And it's around that fire that I got to know Marlene. So this was the centre of the home?
Yeah, this was Mum's place. And, in some respects, people say she would have everything shiny. Everything would have been cleaned constantly. And, they always ask us how come there's baking things out here. But it was there because she was making scones and flatbread and stuff on the fire. And it was always, for when the men came in, it was there for them to eat. You think about what you can do at the fire. They were making their own cheese. They were doing all that. Yeah. They had the cow next door. She'd just go and get her milk. She didn't need to go to a supermarket.
Yeah.
It was all there.
It was all organic.
Really good. Yeah.
Self-sufficient. Yeah.
And I don't know, today we all talk about bone broth. That was the staple diet here then. They would put a bit of meat with barley and vegetables. They had plenty of vegetables. And there was a lot then, before climate change, there was lots of barley here as well. So they would have that on all day. So it was like thick by the end of the day. So they were getting all the goodness. And the meat was falling apart. So it was all, today we're taking all these in supplements, I'm sure, drink shots, but that's how they lived.
So there'd been constant sort of broth over the fire ready for you when you came home.
Always a pan of soup.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the kettle was on. Cup of tea.
Yeah, always a cup of tea
scone.
ready. And a scone.
Cream. Their own cream she would have had from there and her own cheese.
It's amazing.
And it's so simple. We can make cheese over the fire here and it's the easiest thing to make.
Yeah.
It's just...
Is it? How do you make cheese?
Just like milk and add a wee bit of apple cider vinegar to it.
And then it starts to turn into cheese.
It's so quick and easy. And they would have probably used any kind of vinegar that would have been around then for pickling. They would have used it to make their cheese. And all the like different mushrooms and herbs that are outside that we don't use, but people are starting to use now. They would have used all that.
So just completely connected with the land and knowing what was growing around them and what to use, when to use it.
Absolutely. So it was very cosy, and through the day the granny or the mother would be in here doing all the food and everything. And then when the men came in the evening, there would be a big bath here.
A big bath here, just in the same room?
In the same room, and the children would be bathed first in the same water, and then it would be the man from outside. Because he was the dirtiest, so he was last. So he would be last to be bathed.
Can you tell us about peat? Because peat's so important to this area, isn't it? And
people are, I think now with the oil prices, they're starting to do more peat. I can see more people doing it this year.
Peat is a soft, spongy fuel made from partly decayed plants. The Isle of Lewis is covered in it thanks to its wet, boggy ground. It burns well because it's rich in carbon, meaning it catches fire easily and gives off steady heat.
You go out and first thing you have to do is at this time of year you start turfing. So you take away the heather on the top layer, and then you're left on the first layer of peat. It's quite a spongy peat. We use it at night so that it can be used for keeping the fire going, because it's spongier, it doesn't dry out completely. The next layer of peat, it's like a 3-layer, is more an everyday. So that's what we have on just now. It's like it burns nice, and it's quite a crisp peat. And then the very bottom, it's like coal. It's so thick. So if you're wanting to heat something up really quickly, you put these ones on. Layer. So I'll give you an idea. It's like...
you can see that is
the difference.
Like picking up a bit of coal, that bit in your hand.
And that's the middle one.
That's the middle.
So that's what I haven't got any of the top ones.
The top one.
It's probably more like the spongy. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It stays as spongy. But it's handy at night because in the morning there's still a fire going when I come in. So.
And is there peat all around this area?
Every household gets an allocation for a peat bank.
Okay.
And if you cut it every year, that's fine. If you stop cutting it, the allocation can go to someone else. Okay. It's not yours forever. It's only if you're using it. So the Blackhouse has one, and it's just down the road. It's not far for us to go. And 2 of the boys that work here, they cut the peats for us. So it's good. It's all kept in-house. It's all, we do everything ourselves. So.
Try to do it as it always would have been done.
Yeah, absolutely. And in May, we have the young ones coming, the primary 7s from all the schools, and we teach them all the traditional skills. So they learn everything, peat cutting, they learn how to shear, they learn how to do... They learn all about the Blackhouse and what it was like. They learn how to twist wool. They learn all the traditionals. And it's a whole week, and it's fantastic. It's one of my favourite times of the year. This is the bedroom. Do you want to come through?
Yeah, thank you.
Now, the bedroom's quite big when you think of the size.
Quite big. Yeah.
But in the beds here, now, it was horsehair mattresses that used to be here. But
so that's what it traditionally would be.
Yeah, it would have been.
Horsehair mattresses.
Yeah, it's just for hygiene, that's why we've got the straw.
Right.
But there was a shelf on some of them for babies, for the smaller ones.
Oh.
So they would have like a wee cot thing in there.
At the top.
But there'd be about 3 or 4 kids in each box bed.
Just all squished in.
Have you got a light on that?
I've got a light on my
I'll show you. I know.
phone.
If you look at the wood here, you'll see all the wood was driftwood, so you can see all the seaworm.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I would love it if we could turn it round because it's so beautiful. But of course, traditionally, they were hiding the fact that their wood was driftwood. But it's so pretty.
It's so pretty. The shapes it's made, it's gorgeous. It's on the inside of the beds. And they wouldn't want anyone to see that, so they turned it around.
But everything in here has been made with driftwood, all the stuff.
And is this all the original stuff? And this is how it was when
she left, it was 1966, she left everything so it would be left as a monument. And actually the daughter that was living here, she became monument manager.
No way,
so she started running it, and she was introducing visitors to her own home.
How funny.
So
yeah, it's incredible. So it was just left exactly so when the women moved out.
Yeah, Historic Scotland came in, and it was actually a paid monument from day one. She used to sit where we've got the barrow today and sell postcards and invite people into her home.
To have a look around.
To have a look around.
What was her name?
Cressetta.
Cressetta.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
I know.
Tell the stories of her home.
Tell the stories all about herself, yeah.
Bringing up her children
Yeah,
here.
and her granny, well, her mother and the granny before that was Katrina that was in here.
That's brilliant. They just left everything in place.
Yeah. But the Royal Commission had built the house next door for them.
The White House.
Yeah.
So they moved into the White
Yeah.
House, which is now the visitor centre, is it?
Yeah. So this is Harris Tweed. That we've just used this, well, it's to cover the top of the other bunk bed.
So all the family would have been here. And I heard this thing about bundling.
Yeah, that's what I'm all in the...
That's when they're all getting and just
Yeah.
be all cosy together,
Yeah.
all their children and all the family bundled
Yeah,
in.
all the boys in one, all the girls in one. So,
And then mum and dad up here.
no, in this one. But this was actually the grannies in this house. But it probably...
Okay. This was
It
Granny's
probably
bed.
was, yeah. It probably was a parents that
The
would have been in
parents.
it. But this was Granny's. This was where Katrina slept.
Wow.
But I don't know if you can see the indent on the end there. It's a local cat that comes in and sleeps there now at night. Cosy for the fire to get away from everyone else. But it keeps any mice away, so it's quite handy.
And the tweed, so obviously Harris Tweed, as we know
Yeah.
it, as its official name.
Well, our blankets were all made by a man from Barras.
Okay.
All the blankets on the island, and the man's still alive. I think he's nearly 100. But he was a blanket weaver for the island. His name, they called him Tarzan. But amazing guy. I managed to get to speak to him when we were talking about these blankets and telling us the design. So they're all made from Harris wool, but cotton as well.
Okay.
So he was putting cotton strands in it to strengthen them. And that's why they're still strong. That blanket's probably over 100 years old.
Wow, it looks good as new.
Yeah. And how we wash them is
Yeah.
we go to the stream with our wellies and we wash them with cold water.
Okay.
If you were to put warm water with the sooty blanket, it would start getting hard,
Yeah.
like tar. The cold water, it runs away.
Right.
And it's so clean. So we wash them a couple of times a year just to keep them. But we do it in the burn when there's a good spate of water.
You
And we
still
just have
use
our
them.
wellies and we just stamp on them and we just wash them that way.
And the water just runs through. And
Runs
it's fine.
through and it's nice and clean then. But because of the fire all the time, it does get sooty. So
To modern ears, what you're about to hear might seem unusual, but here, under one roof, it made perfect sense. Animals were kept just a few feet from where people lived and slept. Cattle, in particular, were vital to survival, providing milk, warmth and security through the long Hebridean winters. The byre was dark, earthy, but alive, filled with the sounds and smells of livestock. But it also served a practical purpose. The animals' body heat helped warm the house, and their presence reflected a way of life built on close and constant connection with the land. And what's down here?
this is the
Marlene?
byre.
The byre.
This is
Those were
where
the animals.
she had her 2 cows. So there'd be 2 cows here, and they were only milking cows.
Okay.
So and the cows then, they were quite short. That's why the door's the height it is. It was only high enough to get the cow in and out.
Okay.
It wasn't. You didn't have it any higher or any lower.
Right, that was the height of the door.
And
for the
if you
cow.
notice, the other door is lower, and that's because they didn't want the cow in that way, because that's where all the food was kept.
Okay.
The barn
out
was all the food, and the byre was the animals. So she had 2 cows, 8 chickens, 8 sheep. That was the allocation they were given, each area. But eventually they were allowed more. But initially that's all they were allowed. It was enough to keep you alive, not enough to make you money. So that's the way it was.
So who was then, what was the
landlords.
The landlords would
Yeah.
give you that. Every black house had that allocation.
Yeah, that's all you were allowed. Some people couldn't even afford that, but they weren't allowed more.
I think Ali's going to talk to us about the roof, isn't she, and the traditional skills on the roof. But it's amazing having the fire going, and there's no chimney, is there? And no windows? There are a few
No,
windows. But would there be windows?
There's heather turf on the roof here, but above the fire there isn't. There's just the straw, and it seeps through. And when we're changing the straw, we keep that bit, and that's used as fertilizer and there's usually somebody in the village that wants it because it's had the peat smoke over it. So it's a really good fertiliser. And people still use that method. So they're desperate for it because we've still got it here. But that was common practice then.
So they just at some point would change the
They
level
do a
above the fire.
top up every year and they do a full every 10 years. But we've been doing it more frequently because the weather has changed dramatically. There's a lot more rain than there used to be. It used to be very seasonal, whereas now it seems to be, the temperature can go from January right through to November, 8 to 12 degrees, and hardly have any spikes. Hardly have any spikes up or hardly have any spikes down.
So we just sort of stay within that.
Yeah,
realm.
which is very, I don't know, it's very hard to judge what's happening with the climate because we've got a weather station and we're monitoring it, but it's strange. The wind chill can be very cold here. I'm sure you felt it.
We have noticed. Yeah. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's okay, and then the wind will blow and it can be quite bitter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, sorry for the interruption here, but we wouldn't be able to make the Historic Scotland podcast without Historic Scotland members. If you're enjoying the episode so far, there's more waiting for you. Historic Scotland members get access to extended episodes with exclusive behind-the-scenes content and reflections that didn't make it into the public cut. Membership also gives you free entry to Historic Scotland sites across the country, free entry to daytime events, and helps support the care and conservation of the places we explore. If you'd like to hear more and help keep Scotland's stories alive, become a Historic Scotland member today. Follow the link in the episode notes for more information. Go on, you know you want to. It's hard to state just how warm and sheltered and insular the Blackhouse feels. It's cosy, it's homely. There's something primitive about it, but also something so charming. A lot of that is in the walls, but also in the roof. Ali joined me. She's helping to keep traditional skills alive here at the Arnold Blackhouse.
So my name is Ali Davey. I'm a project manager in the technical conservation team in cultural assets. And my job is to run projects that help us make sure that we can have access to the traditional materials that we need to look after all of Scotland's heritage buildings, and that we have access to the knowledge that we need to use all of those materials.
That sounds like a great job, by the way.
It's
quite
dream job.
Is it?
It's dreamy, yeah.
It sounds it, because you must get, there must be such a variety of places and materials and knowledge.
It's every day is a school day as well. You learn so much. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, but you meet incredible people who know so much about really niche things. So you always meet fascinating people, and I always love, I've always been interested in how things are made and where they come from. So like I get to learn that every day about different materials. So it's fascinating.
Like the people who would have lived in this home, Ali's work is rooted in a deep understanding of the landscape, and it's that connection which lies at the heart of everything she does. On the surface, thatching is, of course, just about building a roof, but it's also about working with the land itself, using local materials, reading the weather, and, of course, shaping something that can withstand the Atlantic winds. It's a craft that's not just practical, but deeply connected to the place it comes from. So this is a very cool place, warm place right now, because we've got the peat fire going. So can you tell us about your connection with the Blackhouse?
Sure. One of the areas of research that we're focusing on at the moment is thatching materials. And of course, we're inside an amazing building that shows off the amazing properties of this material and character of it, and how these materials bring such character to what we think of as thatched buildings that really define part of the heritage of the Western Isles. So we only have about 250 thatched buildings left in Scotland, which is not very many, considering there would have been thousands, 200 years ago. And the really interesting thing about Scotland is that it wasn't just one material that was used. As with all traditional materials, people used what was close by. They didn't want to transport it long distances. They wanted it to be cheap and convenient, but also to perform well. So, as with other materials, thatched buildings were no different. They were using materials that were close to hand. So that could have been cultivated materials like cereal crops, barley, oats, rye, all sorts of things, wheat. And it might have been wild materials like marram grass or heather or broom or bracken, juniper, seaweed, all sorts of materials. So the range of materials that were used on roofs in Scotland is massive. But all of that has kind of been reduced down nowadays because agricultural farming has changed so much, because our social structures have changed so much. The way that people gathered those materials and used them has changed over time. So now the range of materials used for roofs is very different because all of that social and agricultural infrastructure has changed, and that's influenced now what we see on roofs. So a lot of the time what drives it is both convenience. Thatchers and owners understandably want commercially available sources of these materials because our society isn't set up anymore to gather lots of those materials, and it's not typically crofters that own many of these buildings. So you see a much smaller variety of materials used now. And the Blackhouse is really interesting because this is roofed with oat straw, and it's laid in a really particular way. So if you think about typical thatched buildings, think about buildings that you'd see in England or across, say the Highlands of Scotland. The thatching material is laid in what's called a directional way. So you'd get a bunch of stuff and you'd lay it in all going in the same direction. Yeah. Whereas here it is sprinkled willy-nilly and compressed. And effectively the shape of the roof that you see is shaped by the body of the thatcher. So there's a direct link with the human that's put the material on the roof. But what's really interesting is that they get the straw and they sprinkle it in a non-directional way and they compress it. And then they use nets and ropes to hold it in place. Again, it's fascinating, the variety, not even in the materials, but even in how they were harvested. Some people would pull crops. They'd pull cereal crops, or they'd pull heather or pull bracken. But in other areas, maybe the next island over, they would be chopping the crops. Mm-hmm. And that would influence how they used the material. And of course, you can then find evidence of that. Traditionally, when straw was harvested, it would have been harvested by hand, or it would have been harvested using traditional machinery like reaper binders, which keep the stems straight and undamaged. So you would have big, long, straight stems. And also the traditional strains of cereal crops traditionally were much taller. The types of cereal crops that are grown nowadays are quite different to ones that were traditionally grown. So traditionally they were very tall. So if you got your timing wrong or you got bad weather, your whole crop could be lodged. So basically it could have been blown over before they could harvest it. Whereas species and strains of cereal crop nowadays tend to be much shorter. Yeah. But that's bad when it comes to thatching because you want the length. Yeah. Although even the evidence on that, again, some sources say they would have used, bits for the grain, bits for bedding, and bits for the roof. The technology to harvest that material has also changed. So nowadays, it's combine harvesters that harvest all of this material, and they basically scrunch it all up. So at the end of the day, you get a bale of straw with all of the stems scrunched up and broken. So you can't use that straw in the same way. So yeah, the Blackhouse is really interesting. And the other thing that's quite special about this building is that it shows how you get regional variations in the shapes of buildings and how they deal with the weather. So if you look at a thatched building in the Western Isles, the roof profile is very different to a thatched building, say, on the outskirts of Edinburgh or in the Highlands. Okay. Because in the Western Isles, there is a lot of wind.
Yeah.
There's not many trees. So the roof needs to be able to deal with that wind. So you get low, rounded roofs in the Western Isles because that helps to deflect the wind more effectively. And this round ridge and the round hips is very typical of the Western Isles. Where if you go to the Highlands, for example, or Swanston Village, for example, outside Edinburgh, you get the typical kind of pitched roof, which is very different. And the materials that you use to create those roofs influences the character and the style that you see. And that's why being able to access these materials that are appropriate for your region is so important, because it can be much more difficult, for example, to replicate that very distinctive rounded character of the roof.
Yeah, you very much see it on your way in.
Yeah, if you don't use the right materials. But of course, thatched roofs in Arnall and in other townships across all of the Western Isles and the Outer Hebrides and the Inner Hebrides, if you go back in time where roofs have been found that have, big thick layers going back decades, it's like very rarely is it just one main thatching material, because things shifted, farming practices changed, how well a harvest was in one year changed. So you find even in one roof, there can be lots of different materials used, from heather, to rushes, these raw materials that would have been used around here as well, all sorts of materials.
So depending on when that roof was, what was going on in the farming land around about the landscape, and it would then change what was used in the thatched material.
And those materials can tell you what was going on at the time that roof was put on the building, so it can give you information, and even the weeds within that roofing material, because you don't get something growing just on its own, particularly cereal crops. You would have had wildflowers and other things growing in amongst them. That can tell you, was it grown on peaty soil or wet soil? So that could even tell you, kind of maybe what area of the land it was harvested from. Roofs like this very commonly were very cyclical. So where you had, for example, people keeping cattle, they very often grew cereal crops. They would use part of the cereal as fodder. They would put more on the roof. And you can see how smoky it is in here. Yeah. So this smoke would go up into the thatch. These roofs were designed so that the smoke would go up and percolate up through the roof. They didn't have the early ones. An example of a house like this one doesn't have a chimney.
No chimney, yeah.
So I think this is one of the last surviving black houses with no chimney, and it's pretty smoky. So it would percolate up through the straw, but that would basically make the straw perfect for use to fertilise the fields. So they would take that straw. Not on every house, but on some, this was how they did it. They would remove some of that straw and use it on the fields.
So everything was getting cycled, reused. Yeah. So it was taken from the land, used for the roof, and then it would be taken from the roof and used back on the land, and then and replaced, obviously, with the new roof.
And of course, looking down the far end of this building, we can see into the byre, which of course wouldn't have been that clean at this time of year, probably, because there would have been cows and livestock living in there in the winter, and they would have, at the end of the season, when they were then letting the livestock out for the summer, in many cases with this type of house, they would dismantle that gable end. The whole gable end would come down, and they'd knock a hole in it, to basically remove all of the soiled animal bedding, and that would be used as a fertilizer in the fields as well. So it was really kind of circular.
So, Ali, I was thinking when this first came into care, and obviously then the roofing and the thatching would have been, the whole structure would have been looked at. But I wonder then, how do you keep replicating, or what is the process of either replicating as the roof would always have been, or maybe potentially, I don't know if it has to be adapted to the use of it now?
So from the reading that I've done, I think there was pretty good evidence. So the roof on this building, I think was still fairly intact. I think in this byre here, part of it had slumped, but the roof timbers and everything, there was a lot survived already. Yeah. So what you see now is really just a repair of what was here originally.
Oh, that's brilliant. So these timbers are pretty much...
Yes. As far as I'm aware, these are all... as far as I'm aware, they're original. And my understanding as well is that the roof covering, there was evidence of that particular kind of roof covering already. So that is, again, and I know that they spoke to lots of locals who would have had local knowledge. So everything that's been done here is based on kind of information that's been handed down from locals and through the generations. So this roof style is particular to here and to this local community. But even though that kind of non-directional straw is quite unusual, you do actually find instances of that in other countries on the continent. They use a similar technique as well. So there definitely is precedent for it. Very often people kind of dismiss these type of buildings as, primitive, but actually they were quite sophisticated. They were very adapted to the weather. Yeah. And quite often ventilation, if you think about sharing this house all winter with livestock, ventilation, they actually were thinking about ventilation, and quite often in buildings like this, they were designed in such a way that air would flow in a particular way through the building to ensure that you had kind of cleaner air, and maybe ammonia and things would be carried out through the building.
It's striking to think about how recently this way of life existed and how radically different it was to what you and I are used to today. The Blackhouse in Arnold seems some distant ancient relic, but it's really not. We're talking about living memory. When we exited the Blackhouse, the smell of the peat fire lingered in my clothes and hair for the rest of the day, but my memory of it has lingered much longer. This was a way of living closely with the land, where people, animals, weather and work were all part of the same rhythm. And that's what stayed with me the most. Not just how people survived here, but how deeply connected they were to everything around them. In a place like this, the past is quite literally close enough to touch. This has been the Historic Scotland podcast. It was produced and edited by Adam Stoner. I'm Sarah McGilvray. Next time, we leave the intimacy of the Blackhouse and head south to the vastness of Callanish. Set against the wide Atlantic sky, these stones have stood here for thousands of years. But who built them, and why? And what have they come to represent? See you then.